And we are live on Facebook. Hey, everyone. This is Joe Massaro, and I am so excited about this because we tried this once before and it didn't quite happen. So I am Joe Massaro with Joe Massaro Ministries, founder of a nonprofit called In Their Hands, who works in the area of children's literacy. And I am so excited again because I have Debbie Wilson with me today. And Debbie and I have known each other for a while, and she has an incredible book and an incredible story. So welcome to Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club as well.
Thank you.
Now, this is, get ready. Let me just say this, because this is an incredible story today that we are going to hear. But I just want to share a little bit about Debbie. She is a Christie Award-winning author, has loved stories from the time she was a small child. She first learned the stories of the persecuted church from her older cousins' Sunday school papers with graphic accounts of the early church and the persecution of the communism. The accounts of the faithfulness and courage of those believers wove their way into her soul, and it's so true. In the late 70s, she discovered the ministry of Russian pastor Georgy Vins, who was freed from a Russian prison in a prisoner exchange. Pastor Vins published the smuggled accounts of imprisoned Russian Christians. Wilson read one of those accounts of a young imprisoned pastor who said, "If God can use me best in prison, why should I want to be anywhere else?" Oh my goodness. As she read more of the persecuted church and realized that few people knew of the dangers faced by the believers in China, Nigeria, Myanmar, and North Korea, she turned to the story. Drawing on true accounts from organizations representing the persecuted and headlines, she fashioned stories filled with espionage, danger, romance, and truth. Her first book, Tiger in the Shadows, won the 2005 Christie Award for Suspense. Debbie is a political and human rights activist. She debated various issues on college campuses and on television. She is currently studying China, terrorism, and persecution of Christians all around the world. Oh my. Welcome again. So good to have you with us.
Thank you, Joe. It's so good to be with you.
Oh my goodness, yes, I know it's been a while since we have actually seen each other. Next week we'll see each other face to face, so I'm excited for that. First, where can people connect with you before we get into the story?
Facebook is the best place. Okay. It's under Debbie Wentworth Wilson, author, on Facebook.
Okay, and we'll repeat that in a little while for you as well. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and this writing journey that you're on.
Well, I guess the main thing, most of my life I've been homeschooling, so I'm now a retired homeschooler. But my writing journey started in the 5th grade. I wrote a short story that put half my classmates to sleep, but it got us out of math class. So I was kind of the class hero at the time. But then I didn't write much anymore until after college. And we started a homeschooling group in Aroostook County, Maine, which is up in the northeast corner of the state. And I put together a newsletter for the homeschoolers to send out because we're quite spread out. And so it helped to be able to send something out. And this was in the time of, I didn't even have an electric typewriter. It was just the original types.
Yes, so, I remember those days.
I like computers a lot better.
Me too.
So it started with that, and then I thought, well, maybe I could write an article or two for some of the homeschooling magazines, and then it spread into writing a story for my kids, a novel, and then after years, I started on Tiger.
Wow. So why this novel, and why about the persecution of Christians in China?
Well, this novel came out of my experiences talking with a number of Christians who knew nothing about what was going on in China or any other country about persecution, because there were nonfiction books out there, and some very good ones, telling what Christians had faced, accounts of Brother Andrew, God's smuggler, who started Open Doors with Brother Andrew, and others who went through that. And yet when you would talk to people about it, most of them don't want to read something that's going to make them feel bad at the end of the day. They've come through work, they just want to relax and feel better, help the kids with their homework, etc. And so I thought, well, maybe if someone wrote a novel, it would seem more, it was slipping the education in around the entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And about the time that this one was, I was getting ready to present this to the editor, the publisher rather, Randy Alcorn came out with a book, Safely Home, which is a tremendous book about the persecution of Christians in China. And it takes us through to the time of the Lord's coming, where the last Christian is persecuted. And it's a phenomenal book. And I thought, well, maybe I should just forget all about this, but I had it all written. So this book, I wrote this book because I like thrillers and suspense stories. I live a very quiet life, so I like my excitement in my reading. And the story came together because I chose episodes from real life that had happened to Christians, such as village raids looking for Christian leaders, and beatings and imprisonments. And during those years, and perhaps now still, Christians would be among those who were required to make Christmas ornaments, and they wouldn't have any tools to make them with. They'd be working with their hands, with hands and teeth, basically, with wire and glass and things like that. And so it was a very hard time, and people didn't know anything about it. So I thought if I could put it in an entertaining way, a thrilling way, then more people might be interested in reading.
And let me just say, you did so beautifully. I just love the book. So what was it to win a Christie out there, the first time you wrote this book? I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It was stunning for me because I was up against one of my favorite authors, Terry Blackstock, and she is such a phenomenal writer.
She is.
And I thought, well, forget that, up against Terry Blackstock and another writer, first timer like me. And so I could hardly believe it when they notified me that I had won the Christie.
Oh, exciting. Oh
It
my,
was.
yes. So what's the premise, or tell us a little bit about the story of the book? I know that you tell the story, you say, from 5 different perspectives. So maybe you can kind of share a little bit about those things with us.
Well, my heroine is Stefanie Peng. She is a young woman out of college, out of her master's degree, and she finds out that her beloved grandmother, that she is so close to, has cancer and refuses to have surgery. And the only way that she can convince her grandmother to get the surgery is if she promises to go to China and bring her grandfather home. So that is the primary plot. Everything else ties into it. Her love interest, which she has thought of as one of her best friends for years. She's known him since she was a young teenager, and he was several years older. She doesn't know that he's a CIA agent.
Yes.
And his main job is looking for Chinese espionage and trying to find the agents who have been involved in spying on trade secrets from various companies, especially ones that are related to defense. So he has reasons to be in and out of China. Stefanie goes to China, but she doesn't realize that she's being a tool.
Mm.
She's been betrayed by a friend, and the book gets its name, Tiger in the Shadows, because one of the primary agents behind it is called the Beijing Tiger. He was involved in a number of things in the past, trying to capture dissidents from China, and that ties into it. So we see his perspective too. I wanted to give the perspective of someone in government, and then the other two perspectives are Ren Shaoqi, who is he's not committed to or against Christianity. He's a useful tool for Kong, and he is put in the path of Peng Changde, who is Stefanie's grandfather, to try to get the information from Stefanie's grandfather so that Kong doesn't have to use Stefanie. Also, Kong wants to get Stefanie in China because her father is a world-known physicist who's been working on lasers for a number of applications. So China wants him. And then the last perspective is the brother, who is known as Lao, but nobody outside the church really knows who he is. And even in the church, they know him only as the brother. And so he's the one that they think can bring down, the communist government thinks can bring down basically the church because of his connections to it.
Yes.
So those are the perspectives, and that's basically how it ties together.
And it does tie together beautifully. And I didn't mention this, but for those of you who are watching this, we are live on Facebook. If you have a question, that's what I was looking down for. Sorry. If you have a question for Debbie, please feel free to put it on. I'm trying to pay attention to it while I'm listening as well and asking questions. So anyway, so why espionage? You know, I mean, there are so many things. You've got espionage, you've got there's my phone, espionage, romance, so many different things. Why that espionage angle? How prevalent is that?
Well, espionage is still a big problem. When I started researching the book, it was in the headlines quite a bit. Unfortunately, China has a way of sending people into our country or using people who are in our country who are in sensitive places, and then using somebody back home, maybe a brother who's still back there, or threatening the life of somebody they love.
Yes.
And getting them to acquiesce. And for some of them, of course, it's voluntary because their hearts are still in China. But it is prevalent, it is dangerous, and it's becoming very clear that China's primary goal is to become the world superpower.
Yes.
There are books out about that now.
Yes.
So the espionage has played in heavily because they actually destroyed most during the Cultural Revolution. They undermined much of their education. So they destroyed a lot of their people who were studying engineering and things like that. So they had this big hole, and they couldn't fill it by doing their own research. So they had to make arrangements to bring people into other countries that had nuclear secrets and cyber secrets and things like this, and could train their people, and which we largely did.
Yeah, and I know that we hear about it, you know, if you are really watching the news and listening to, you know, certain news stations, you will hear a lot more about it. But it is prevalent for sure. Then when you wrote the book, and even more so, I would say probably today. So what was the hardest part about writing this story? I mean, this was not an easy story. I mean, your research alone, talk about that as well. Had to be extensive.
I did years of research before I even started on the book because I was interested in the persecuted church. And I chose China because it's a lot easier to find information about China than about North Korea, say, which is usually considered the world's worst persecutor. So that's really why I chose China. But the hardest part was actually trying to figure out how the brother and Peng Changde would think, because they were so far ahead of me spiritually. They had gone through so much and thought through so much and prayed through so much. And I wasn't anywhere near there, and still aren't, and still am not. But
Mhm.
That was the hardest part. How do I portray them accurately when I'm not there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have to tell you that you can see as you're reading, not just the research and the prayer that went into this as you are writing, and you just did an. I have to say, you need to read this book. This is a book that opens up your eyes in so many ways, and I was like blown away in some areas of it as well. We don't, like you're saying earlier, we don't think about these type of things on a daily basis. We are more insulated. You watch the news, you may hear something, but you know what? Oh, we don't think necessarily about how this affects our lives. And it really does it not?
Yes, it does, and will increasingly affect it
Yes,
as as we have people come over here. This year alone, we've had what 100,000 or more illegal immigrants from China come. Well,
yes,
some of them may be here to spy. Some of them may honestly be here because China killed off a large number of their baby girls with abortion with their one China policy or
yeah,
their one baby policy.
yeah,
And so many men over in China have no chance of actually finding a wife, especially if they're among those who are less economically advanced.
yeah,
Um, and so some of them may be here for that reason, that they want a hope and a future and a family.
yeah,
But some of them you have to worry about. So, yes, we're going to be affected by it, and we're going to be affected by how people in our country see not only China, but see Christians. We're starting to see more and more rejection of Christianity, the attacks on Israel.
yes. Oh my goodness, yes. That is in the forefront, of so much that's going on, and prayers for everyone there. It's just when I think about, the one child policy and all of the things that are going on in this world, it's like, if you're a Christian, that times are changing because of what the Bible talks about. But it is scary. It is
It is.
extremely scary to see what is happening now.
Uh,
Okay, so how obviously in writing this, we start on a project, and over a period of time, you cannot help but do all your research and all this writing without having it affect your faith walk. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
I think the biggest way that it affected my faith walk, and it definitely did, was I found at the end of the project that little things that I would get so upset about in the past in my own life became rather unimportant. It put my life into perspective.
Mhm.
Here, I was complaining because I couldn't pay the electric bill this month, but this other pastor in the Soviet Union was glad to be in prison if that's where God could use him. And my attitude was so different. It was
Yes.
more about me.
Mhm.
And so it helped me so much by seeing what these people went through and that they could come through it faithfully and successfully. That
Yeah.
was an encouragement. I think those were the two main reasons, or the two main things that helped me.
Yeah, I know that in just reading this, and it took me a little while, to read it because I was taking my time. Uh, and I have to tell you that it gives you a greater appreciation of your own life.
Mhm.
And like you're saying, all the things that we think, oh, I can't do this or I couldn't do that. You know what? They're really nothing compared to what, the church has gone through from the times of, Jesus.
Mhm.
Um,
And there are places around the world that we don't tend to think about, like Myanmar.
yes.
Um, you have and I haven't kept up on this the past few years, but you had the government going after certain Burmese people
Hmm.
because of their tribes. And then you had a divide between the Christians in the tribes and let me see, now I've forgotten what religion they are. I don't think they're Muslim. I've forgotten. But anyway, you had conflict there too.
Yes.
And one of the problems that they would have is that the government would come in the nights to these villages and destroy the villages and take some of these people prisoner and use some to be mine finders, minesweepers, and just terrible things that we don't have to worry about going from here to the store.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to think, well, how can they actually go through it? And I don't know if you remember back in when Obama was president, um, there was a school that was raided, Christian girls' school. I think it was in Nigeria, but I may have the country wrong.
Yeah, but I
And
remember it.
Boko Haram, excuse me, or whichever group it was,
Yeah.
terrorists, seized this bunch of girls.
Mm.
And President Obama and Mrs. Obama uh, did a hashtag for Free Our Girls. And most of the girls were returned, but a big part of the reason they were returned or released was because they agreed to convert to Islam. But
Mhm.
one girl named Leah is still imprisoned, and she has been gang raped multiple times. She has 2 children by these men.
Mhm.
And I would like to ask your viewers to pray for Leah. Pray for Leah's release, and then that God would help her when she comes home, because I can't imagine what she's gone through.
I know. I can't personally even begin to imagine what has happened to her. And with her faith, obviously, God is with her and he is, helping her to get through whatever it is she's going through. But I'm appalled that things are happening like this in this world, and that I don't want to get political, but we as a country need to be doing more in this world and be the leader that we are supposed to be. So that is my political little statement there. So what do you want readers to take away from this story? I know we've talked about a lot of things. Is there anything else that you want them to take away?
The main thing I would like them to take away is the importance of praying for the persecuted church. There
Mhm.
are organizations like Voice of the Martyrs, International Christian Concern, um, Open Doors, that put out information on a daily or weekly basis.
I actually have, I don't know if anybody can see this. It's probably not good, but Barnabas Aid, I actually get that.
Mhm.
Um, and read through that and pray over that as well. So yes.
That is what Christians in persecuted countries ask for first. The first thing they ask is that people pray for them. The second thing they ask for is Bibles.
Mm,
And some of these organizations raise money and send Bibles to them.
yeah.
If you can give to some of these organizations, some of them provide safe houses where I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, there was a woman on death row in Pakistan for blasphemy. Her
Mm,
name was Asiya Bibi, and she had gotten into a quarrel on at the farm where she was working with some Muslim women. She had taken a drink out of their cup and then passed the cup to them. Well, they looked at that as a terrible thing, and so one of them brought up some question about Muhammad, and she defended Jesus, and that was why she was accused of blasphemy. But her family needed to go into hiding, and there are a number of Christians that type of thing is that way. They need to get to a safe place. And so some of these organizations provide safe places. They provide bicycles for evangelists to travel by. Um, but especially the prayer. The prayer is especially important for God's protection, for God's wisdom, that they will be faithful. There's a pastor and his wife in Iran, and I don't remember their name, but they have a large number of children.
mhm,
And they were arrested for leaving the faith of Islam
mm,
and becoming Christians, and for being a pastor. And they were taken away from this large family of children. And so one of their concerns, I'm sure, is what happens to their children? Will the church be able to step up and help them? Will other family members? Will they be forced into the army? Will they be forced into marrying a Muslim? Are they getting fed enough? Are they getting an education? All the things that we would worry about and wonder about, those are things that are going through those parents' minds, in addition to what they're suffering in prison.
Yeah, I just, having children and grandchildren of my own, I could not imagine at all what they must be going through. Um, I know that, as parents in this country, we have, I mean, I was just watching the news this morning and, another school shooting and, I think it was an 11-year-old was killed. And the principals, I think, jumped in front of some of the students getting shot, and he was shot and in the hospital right now. So there are things that are just happening around us in this world that are just, things that I never could have imagined growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Never, you know. So what suggestions, would you give to somebody who's interested in writing? Because, I know that, we hear about this, oh, I have a story, or, I'd like to learn more. What could they possibly do to get started? Or any other suggestions?
One of the first suggestions that I would have is to read the types of books that you want to write. So if you want to write Amish fiction or romance or thrillers, read that type of book, because you absorb the ideas of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in your genre. What can you stretch a little bit that your genre doesn't do, or doesn't generally do? And what can you not do? Like in Amish fiction, you are very likely not going to have aggressive militias in the Amish fiction. They don't have those. And so you have to be true to reality, but you can also stretch it here and there sometimes. Another thing is, if you can get involved in a writers group, which is how you and I met.
Yes.
If you can get involved in a writers group, you can check with your library to see if, or a local college to see if they know of or a bookstore to see if they know of writers groups in your area, and they can help you get started. When we started our writers group, it's going on 30 years old now. We were especially concerned that it be friendly and it be supportive and not competitive.
Yes, a
And
safe place.
so, yeah, that it makes a big difference when
Yeah.
you're all pushing for one another to do well instead of knocking heads.
Mm.
And so you might want to check into what the writing group is like. Is it friendly? Is it open? What are the rules for it, if there are any?
Mhm.
So those would be my two main suggestions, I think.
Okay. I think those are really good suggestions as well. So what is next for you? I mean, after all of this, what are you doing now?
Well, I'm working on editing the sequel to Tiger, and then I've written a couple of other stories that I'd like to get published. One is a fantasy that I originally wrote for my children, and the other is a Western. Books like Tiger, they take a lot of they take a lot of work in researching them. And so it's nice to be able to turn to something that you can just relax and
Yes.
write instead of doing a lot of research.
Mm.
So sometimes between between the heavier books, I need something lighter.
I can totally understand that. So again, where can readers connect with you?
The best place would be Facebook. It's Debbie Wentworth Wilson, author. And I'd love to hear from folks.
That would be wonderful. I have loved this time, I was excited to see your book. Tell us a little bit about, so I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we are both connected with Kim Autry. So maybe
Yes.
just share a little bit about the book getting published.
This was a republishing for Tiger, and Kim was so great to work with, so patient with me. She's with Never Alone Publishing, and she really helps you through the whole publishing process, makes it as easy as possible, and works on your time schedule. So we've had my husband is ill, and we've had health issues that have slowed my progress down on the editing. And she has been so understanding, as she's just great to work with. So I would recommend her highly.
Yes, I love him. All right. So again, I'm Joe Massaro. You can reach me at joemassaroministries.com, or if you're interested in my nonprofit, it is intheirhands.net. Love to hear from you. And Debbie, what can I say? You know, this is, like I said at the beginning, this was a while in happening, and I am so honored and blessed to know you, not just as a writer, but as a friend. So I appreciate you, and thank you so much for being with us. I'm just thrilled to be able to finally get this out and get the book, is what I can tell you. You are going to be incredibly blessed because the story is just absolutely amazing. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and thank you for the friendship.
Thank you. And don't forget prayer,
Yes.
the most important thing you can do. Blessings to everybody in this wonderful new year. May it just be an incredible year of just blessings and change in our lives. You know, I'm always asking God, you know, that I don't want to be just stuck where I am, you know, to help me to grow and mature more this year in what it is He's called me to do. So if we can all pray for that for each of us as well. So thank you again, and we will see you next time. God bless everybody.